63 minutes that changed warfare forever. January 26, 1945. Near the village of Holtzwihr, France, the temperature hovers at -12 degrees Celsius as Private First Class Audie Murphy crouches behind a disabled M10 tank destroyer, field telephone pressed against his ear. Diesel engines rumble in the distant tree line. This is the American spirit that won World War II. Murphy grabs the handset. Fire Direction Center. This is Able 6, fire mission. Enemy company moving this direction. The Germans figured this scrawny Texas farm boy was easy pickings. They were dead wrong. Here's the brutal mathematics. Murphy holds roughly 200 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition, enough for perhaps 5 minutes of sustained fire against overwhelming odds. The enemy. Intelligence reports suggest 240 German infantry, supported by assault guns and Panzerfaust teams from the 17th SS Panzer Grenadier Division. What would you do facing those impossible odds? The radio crackles. Shot over. Artillery explodes in the tree line. Murphy adjusts fire through the handset. Left 200. Drop 100. Fire for effect. What happened next wasn't Hollywood heroics. This was American military science applied with devastating precision. 63 minutes of systematic destruction that would rewrite tactical doctrine and prove democratic military systems superior to authoritarian alternatives. When the smoke cleared, by army estimates, 18 German soldiers lay dead within 300 meters of Murphy's position. Approximately 23 wounded crawled back toward their lines. 2 Stu-G assault guns withdrew after taking direct artillery hits coordinated through Murphy's fire direction. One Texas farm boy had held off what after-action reports described as a reinforced enemy company. German inspectors who examined the battlefield the following day documented their findings with methodical precision. Shell casings scattered around the defensive position, impact craters from incoming mortar rounds, blood trails leading back toward the German assembly area. But witnesses suggest they stopped their detailed count at 200 pieces of evidence, 200 items that defied their understanding of small unit tactics and individual soldier capabilities. Can you believe one person accomplished this? This real story surpasses any Hollywood fiction. This wasn't superhuman ability. This was precision shooting, coordinated artillery, and unbreakable American determination rolled into one unstoppable defensive system. January 26, 1945. Minutes later, the bloodbath begins, and with it, proof that American military doctrine creates force multipliers no enemy can overcome. But Murphy's incredible stand didn't emerge from nowhere. Understanding how one soldier accomplished the impossible requires examining the man, the training, and the system that forged him into the most lethal defensive fighter in the European theater, Audie Leon Murphy. Born June 20th, 1925, in a Texas sharecropper's cabin that leaked when it rained and offered little protection against winter cold. This represents the American dream in its rawest form. From poverty to battlefield excellence, 12 children in the Murphy family, an absent father who abandoned them early, a mother who died of illness by the time Audie turned 16. By 5th grade, young Murphy was picking cotton in Texas fields to help keep his siblings fed. But here's what separated this rural boy from thousands of other Depression-era farm children. Murphy could shoot with supernatural accuracy. At age 12, he hunted rabbits with a .22 caliber rifle to put meat on the family table. Not for sport or recreation, but for survival. Every cartridge cost money the family couldn't afford to waste. The crack of his .22 echoed across those Texas fields as Murphy consistently dropped running rabbits at 50 yards. Neighbors who witnessed his marksmanship thought he possessed some kind of mystical gift, but period accounts suggest it wasn't magic. It was necessity driving relentless practice. Imagine learning warfare from textbooks. Murphy learned from bullets and empty stomachs. Pearl Harbor changed everything for America and for Murphy personally. The United States Army exploded from roughly 190 zeros and peacetime soldiers to over 8 million warriors deployed across multiple theaters. Military recruiters needed fighters immediately. Murphy attempted to enlist in 3 different services. The Marines rejected him for being too small. The Navy turned him away for being too young. The Army initially refused him for appearing too frail. At 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing approximately 112 pounds, he looked like a strong wind could knock him unconscious. The Army finally accepted Murphy in June 1942, though barely. His drill sergeant at Camp Walters, Texas, probably expected this undernourished teenager to wash out during basic training within weeks. They had no conception of what Texas poverty had forged. Basic training taught Murphy military discipline and unit tactics, but the fundamental skills were already present. Marksmanship, already expert level. Patience under pressure, developed through years of hunting for family survival, making every shot count. absolutely essential when ammunition represents precious resources. The Army enhanced his existing capabilities with crew-served weapons training, artillery fire direction procedures, and small unit leadership techniques. They transformed a natural marksman into a precision killing machine. Sicily, 1943. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. Murphy's first combat against German forces. His initial firefight. After-action reports indicate Murphy eliminated 3 German soldiers at ranges exceeding 400 yards using his M1 Garand rifle. His platoon sergeant later wrote in official correspondence, "That soldier shoots like he was born to it." Sicily represented the warm-up. Italy would test his resolve. The Anzio beachhead broke lesser men entirely. The French campaign proved his tactical evolution. By January 1945, Murphy had earned the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. He had eliminated so many enemy soldiers that his company commander stopped maintaining precise counts. The skinny farm boy rejected by 3 military services had evolved into the most lethal infantry soldier in the European theater. But how does someone with 5th grade formal education master combined arms tactics and coordinate complex fire missions? The answer lies in American military training doctrine. The United States system emphasized individual initiative operating within team frameworks. Every rifleman learned basic artillery spotting procedures. Every soldier understood how their weapon integrated into larger tactical schemes. This wasn't the rigid German Wehrmacht system that demanded unthinking obedience to superior officers. American doctrine represented applied ingenuity in warfare, teaching farm boys to think like field commanders while maintaining the aggressive spirit of frontline fighters. 30 months of continuous combat had transformed Murphy into a battlefield genius. He could analyze terrain like a professional engineer, coordinate artillery fires like an experienced forward observer, and engage targets with sniper-level precision. The foundation was established for Holtzwihr. But first, Murphy would experience failure that taught lessons essential for his greatest triumph. January 24th, 1945. The Colmar Pocket, Alsace region, France. Temperature readings suggest minus 15 degrees Celsius. Murphy's accumulated luck nearly expired completely. Here's what civilian accounts of military heroes typically omit. Genuine warriors fail repeatedly before achieving legendary status. The 3rd Infantry Division had spent 18 brutal days grinding through German defensive positions. Murphy's Company B was reduced from approximately 180 effective soldiers to just 94 combat-ready personnel. Frozen mud made movement treacherous. Constant 88mm artillery created psychological stress. Wehrmacht troops demonstrated they intended to contest every meter of French territory. The assigned mission appeared deceptively simple: clear a fortified farmhouse complex outside the village of Riedveer, distance to target, roughly 400 meters across open terrain. Military intelligence reported light resistance, estimating perhaps 1 machine gun squad defending the position. Intelligence assessments proved catastrophically wrong. German forces had converted those farm buildings into an integrated defensive fortress. 3 MG-42 machine guns provided interlocking fields of fire, each weapon capable of cycling 1,200 rounds per minute. 2 81mm mortar teams occupied concealed positions for indirect fire support. 1 expertly camouflaged PaK-40 anti-tank gun weighted with armor-piercing ammunition. When Company B launched their assault shortly after dawn, the battlefield erupted in coordinated defensive fires. Murphy's squad encountered a crossfire that shredded their formation within seconds of entering the kill zone. His closest friend, Private Rodriguez, absorbed an MG-42 burst consisting of several round center mass. Squad leader Sergeant Mitchell's head disappeared from a K98 sniper rifle shot at approximately 250 meters. For the first time during 32 months of combat experience, Audie Murphy froze completely. The soldier who never missed targets lay face down in frozen mud while 7 92mm bullets snapped inches overhead. Shrapnel had destroyed his radio. 8 men from his squad were casualties. The farmhouse complex appeared absolutely impregnable. This wasn't hunting rabbits across Texas fields. This represented German defensive doctrine at its most lethal, overlapping fires, pre-registered mortar targets, and disciplined infantry who understood their tactical responsibilities. Company B executed a fighting withdrawal. Final casualties: 14 soldiers killed, 23 wounded. Mission status: complete failure. What would you change first? The route, the timing, or the fires. That evening, Murphy occupied a shell crater, studying the tactical problem through field glasses. German doctrine emphasized defense in depth, multiple firing positions, coordinated fields of fire, and rapid repositioning when threatened by superior forces. American assault tactics during 1945 relied heavily on overwhelming firepower combined with individual initiative, but firepower becomes meaningless without proper coordination. An initiative proves fatal when soldiers don't understand enemy systems. Murphy requested a detailed consultation with Lieutenant Davidson, the unit's artillery forward observer. He wasn't seeking simple fire support. Murphy wanted to master fire direction procedures completely. How do you walk artillery rounds onto specific targets? How do you adjust for wind drift at 800-meter ranges? How do you coordinate multiple batteries without endangering friendly forces? Davidson expressed surprise at Murphy's technical curiosity. Most infantry soldiers simply screamed map coordinates into radio handsets when requesting fire missions. Murphy wanted to understand ballistics, timing sequences, and precision techniques. The mathematical requirements were brutal. 105mm howitzer shells travel at approximately 550 feet per second. Time of flight to an 800-meter target, roughly 4 seconds. German machine gun crews could relocate their positions within seconds after hearing incoming artillery rounds. The solution required simultaneous fires from multiple battery positions, timed to impact within narrow windows, suppress every defensive position simultaneously, then advance infantry under the protective artillery umbrella. 2 days later, Company B received orders to attempt the same mission, identical farmhouse complex, same German defensive positions, the same 400-meter kill zone that had cost them 14 lives. This time, Murphy possessed a comprehensive plan. Pre-dawn reconnaissance revealed German firing patterns and rotation schedules. MG-42 positions rotated crews approximately every 20 minutes. Mortar teams repositioned after firing roughly 12 rounds from any single location. The anti-tank gun only engaged when American armor appeared within their fields of fire. Murphy positioned himself 600 meters northeast, where he could observe all enemy firing points through field glasses. He pre-plotted 8 separate artillery targets using map coordinates verified through direct visual observation. Minutes later, Murphy keyed his radio handset. Fire mission. 8 targets. Simultaneous time on target. Within seconds, the coordinated barrage lasted exactly 90 seconds. Dozens of rounds of 105mm high explosive impacted those farmhouse positions with clockwork precision. Every German defensive position received neutralizing fires before they could mount effective return fire. Company B advanced under the artillery umbrella. German resistance collapsed within minutes. American casualties: 2 soldiers wounded, 0 killed. Murphy had transformed from individual hero into battlefield systems manager. The crucial lesson: American military doctrine wasn't designed around superhuman soldiers. It empowered ordinary people to master extraordinary coordination between combat arms. But Murphy absorbed an additional insight at Riedweiler that would prove decisive at Holtzwihr. Real combat power emerges from understanding how all tactical elements function as integrated systems. Infantry, artillery, communications, logistics, and individual initiative combining into irresistible force. The failure taught lessons that would save his life during his greatest hour. 2 days before the Holtzwihr action, Murphy receives the most shocking news of his military career. This represents the moment when everything changed for the Texas farm boy and for American tactical doctrine. Company B had lost another officer to combat casualties. Captain Jenkins absorbed shrapnel from an 88mm artillery round during operations near Riedweiler. Lieutenant Morrison was evacuated to a field hospital with severe trench foot. The 3rd Infantry Division was losing junior officers faster than replacement systems could provide qualified personnel. Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Pearson summoned Murphy to his command post. "Son, I understand you're currently a private first class, but you possess more combat experience than half my lieutenants combined. I'm assigning you command of Company B." Murphy studied the tactical maps spread across Pearson's field table. Red symbols indicated German defensive positions. Blue arrows showed planned American advances. The mathematical odds appeared brutal once again. "Sir, my count suggests approximately 60 effective soldiers remaining in Company B. Intelligence reports indicate we'll face a reinforced German company. That calculates to 4-to-1 odds favoring the enemy." Pearson nodded grimly. "That's precisely why I need someone who thinks systematically under pressure." This represented America's secret weapon in 1940. 45. Battlefield promotion based on demonstrated competence rather than formal rank or social connections. Murphy's formal education had ended it in 5th grade, but his combat education represented doctoral-level expertise. The mission briefing revealed seemingly impossible operational requirements. The 15th Infantry Regiment needed to advance through Holtzwihr village to secure a critical road junction. German forces had established defensive positions throughout the area, machine gun nests, mortar teams, and at least 2 self-propelled guns. Standard military doctrine called for company-strength assault operations. The problem: Murphy commanded barely platoon-strength personnel after weeks of continuous combat operations. Murphy invested hours studying every available detail. Aerial reconnaissance photographs revealed German firing positions at ranges from 200 to 800 meters. Radio intercepts suggested enemy patrol schedules changed every 4 hours. Weather forecasts predicted clear skies with unlimited visibility. The tactical breakthrough occurred when Murphy realized something military textbooks don't teach. Sometimes the most effective defense involves single-point offensive operations. Instead of distributing thin forces across multiple objectives, concentrate everything on one critical position. Occupy key terrain. Force German forces to attack through a predetermined kill zone. Transform their numerical advantage into a tactical liability. He identified the perfect location, a slight elevation 800 meters northeast of Holtzwihr, with clear fields of fire in 3 directions. An abandoned M10 tank destroyer occupied that position, providing excellent cover and elevation advantage. Murphy's plan violated every conventional tactical manual. Occupy that position with minimal personnel. Establish fire direction capabilities. Then coordinate devastating artillery strikes against German maneuver elements. The genius wasn't firepower concentration, it was positional advantage. German forces would need to cross 400 meters of open ground to reach his defensive position. That represented approximately 4 minutes of movement under direct observation and fire. Assuming they could maintain assault speed across broken terrain, Murphy calculated the lethal mathematics. M2 Browning, 50 caliber machine gun with sustained rate of 40 rounds per minute. Pre-positioned artillery targets every 100 meters along all German approach routes. Radio communication established with 3 separate fire direction centers. One properly positioned and supported soldier could theoretically engage an entire enemy company with devastating effect. January 26, 1945. Before dawn, Murphy and radio operator Private Johnson moved through pre-dawn darkness toward the disabled tank destroyer. Behind them, the remainder of Company B occupied secondary positions 600 meters to the rear, close enough to provide support, far enough to avoid destruction if the primary position became overrun. Minutes later, Murphy established radio contact with 3 artillery batteries, 105 mm howitzers positioned at 400 meters range, 455 mm guns at all 800 meters, and the division's 8-inch howitzers at maximum effective range. Fire direction center. This is Able 6. Radio check. Over. Able 6. This is Fire direction center. You are loud and clear. Standing by for fire missions. Murphy settled behind the M2 Browning machine gun mounted on the destroyed tank destroyer. The weapon had survived the vehicle's destruction with mounting intact and traverse mechanisms functional. Available ammunition: approximately 200 rounds of 50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary. Shortly after, German diesel engines became audible in the tree line 800 meters northeast of Murphy's position. The turning point wasn't merely tactical, it represented a psychological transformation. For 32 months, Murphy had reacted to enemy initiatives and movements. Today, he would force them to react to his tactical decisions. This Texas farm boy was preparing to demonstrate what American military science could accomplish when individual excellence operated within systematic support frameworks. But before examining the legendary hour at Holtzwihr, we must understand the terrain and environmental factors that made Murphy's defense possible. Winter in the Alsace region creates specific tactical conditions that influenced every aspect of the engagement. The frozen ground provided stable firing platforms, but made digging defensive positions nearly impossible. Snow cover offered some concealment, but Ongor also created contrast that made movement detection easier at distance. Tree lines stood bare of foliage, eliminating natural concealment while providing excellent observation ranges. Fields of fire extended to maximum effective range of available weapons without vegetation interference. Wind patterns carried sound clearly, meaning Murphy could hear German vehicle engines and movement long before visual contact. Visibility extended to approximately 1,500 meters under clear skies. This gave Murphy significant advantage in target detection and range estimation, but also meant German forces could observe his position once they identified its location. The frozen ground prevented Murphy from improving his defensive position through normal entrenchment. However, the disabled M10 tank destroyer provided excellent frontal protection against small arms fire and indirect fragmentation. The vehicle's sloped armor could deflect everything except direct hits from anti-tank weapons. Elevation advantage of perhaps 15 meters gave Murphy observation over all approach routes. German forces would be advancing uphill across open ground, reducing their movement speed and increasing exposure time under fire. Wind conditions remained relatively calm, eliminating significant bullet drift calculations for precision shooting. The cold air increased bullet velocity slightly while making barrel heating less problematic during sustained fire operations. Snow depth measured approximately 6 inches, enough to slow infantry movement, but not deep enough to provide meaningful concealment. German soldiers would leave clear tracks indicating their movement routes and assembly areas. Most importantly, the clear weather conditions were perfect for artillery observation and adjustment. Murphy could clearly see impact points and make precise corrections to fire missions without weather interference affecting visibility or radio communications. These environmental factors combine to create nearly ideal conditions for defensive operations. Excellent observation, clear fields of fire, natural cover, and perfect weather for coordinated fires. But terrain advantage means nothing without the technical expertise to coordinate artillery support effectively. Murphy's mastery of fire direction procedures would prove as important as his marksmanship skills. Radio communication in 1945 relied on frequency modulation systems that required skilled operators to maintain contact under combat conditions. Murphy had mastered not just basic radio procedures, but the precise terminology and timing required for effective artillery coordination. Artillery fire direction involves complex mathematical calculations performed under extreme time pressure. Forward observers must determine accurate target locations, estimate range and direction from battery positions, and account for weather conditions affecting projectile flight. Murphy understood that 105mm howitzer shells require time from fire command to impact at 800-meter ranges. This included battery response time, tube traverse, ammunition loading, and actual flight time. Coordinating fires from multiple batteries required precise timing to achieve simultaneous impact. The process begins with target identification and accurate location determination, using map coordinates or visual reference points. Murphy had pre-plotted 8 separate target areas along likely German approach routes, with precise coordinates verified through direct observation. Fire commands follow standardized formats to prevent confusion under stress. Target designation, ammunition type, number of rounds, and specific timing requirements. Murphy's training allowed him to issue these commands rapidly and accurately, while simultaneously engaging targets with direct fire. Adjustment procedures involve bracketing targets with initial rounds, observing impact points, and issuing corrections for subsequent fires. A skilled forward observer can walk artillery rounds onto specific targets within a few adjustment sequences. Murphy's expertise extended beyond basic procedures to advanced techniques like time-on-target missions, where multiple batteries coordinate fires to impact simultaneously. This prevents enemy forces from taking cover after hearing initial rounds and maximizes destructive effect. Battery position data, ammunition characteristics, and meteorological conditions all affect accuracy and timing. Murphy had memorized this information for all supporting batteries, allowing him to request specific fire missions without delays for calculation. Radio discipline becomes critical during intense operations. Multiple units may require fire support simultaneously, creating potential communication conflicts. Murphy's experience allowed him to communicate essential information concisely and clearly. Most importantly, Murphy understood the psychological effects of precisely coordinated artillery fires. Enemy forces subjected to accurate, sustained bombardment lose cohesion and aggressive spirit rapidly. Proper timing of artillery fires can break enemy attacks before they develop momentum. This technical mastery, combined with exceptional marksmanship and advantageous terrains, created conditions for the legendary defense that would follow. As German diesel engines grew louder in the tree line, Murphy made final preparations for what would become the most thoroughly documented individual action in American military history. January 26th, 1945. Minutes later, the German assault begins, and with it, the ultimate test of American military doctrine. Picture the tactical situation. Murphy positioned gear behind a 50 caliber machine gun, watching 240 German infantry soldiers advance across open terrain. What happens next represents pure military science applied with devastating precision. The M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun fires projectiles with muzzle velocity of 2.910 feet per second. Each round weighs 1.8 ounces and delivers kinetic energy equivalent to a sledgehammer impact. Effective range against personnel extends to 800 meters under ideal conditions. Murphy didn't employ the Hollywood technique of continuous automatic fire. Instead, he used controlled bursts of 6 to 9 rounds per trigger activation, 30 seconds of firing, followed by 20 seconds of cooling to prevent barrel overheating. Proper thermal management represented the difference between sustained effective fire and weapon malfunction. The first German squad reached 600 meters from Murphy's position. He keyed his radio handset. Fire mission. Grid reference 347521. Infantry in the open. Fire for effect. Within seconds, 105mm artillery rounds bracketed the German formation. Would you adjust left first or drop range under pressure? Each high-explosive shell creates a lethal radius of 35 meters and wound radius extending to 100 meters. The German soldiers continued advancing despite casualties. The second assault wave advanced shortly after. Murphy transitioned to direct fire engagement. The 50 caliber's trajectory remains essentially flat to 500 meters, requiring minimal elevation adjustment for precision shooting. Murphy's initial burst eliminated the German squad leader at 450 meters. Center mass impacts that physically lifted the target off his feet. The distinctive crack of 50 caliber fire echoed across the frozen battlefield like thunder, psychologically devastating to troops under fire. American training doctrine emphasized individual initiative operating within coordinated fire support. Murphy didn't wait for permission or detailed orders. He identified targets, engaged immediately, then adjusted artillery based on observed enemy reactions. The psychological effect on German forces proved devastating. They had expected to face multiple defensive positions, but instead encountered surgical precision from a single location. German tactical doctrine couldn't determine whether they faced one soldier or an entire platoon. Minutes later, German mortar rounds began impacting around Murphy's position, 81mm projectiles whistling inbound, explosions walking progressively closer to his location. This represented standard German suppression technique against identified defensive positions. Murphy had already requested counter-battery fire missions. Within seconds, 155mm artillery rounds were impacting suspected German mortar positions. American doctrine: locate enemy indirect fire assets, coordinate overwhelming response fires, and destroy them rapidly. The German company commander made his fatal tactical error shortly after. He ordered direct frontal assault across open ground. Traditional German doctrine: when flanking maneuvers prove impossible, overwhelm defensive positions through massed infantry assault. Fatal mistake against Murphy's systematically coordinated defense. If flanking dies, do you still charge or reset the plan? Sustained fire at 40 rounds per minute against advancing infantry creates devastating effects at 300-meter ranges. Murphy's fire discipline remained precise. Engage closest threats first. Work systematically outward through the target array. Each burst targeted specific individuals: squad leaders, radio operators, soldiers carrying heavy weapons or special equipment. Remove command and control capabilities. Eliminate specialized threats and destroy unit cohesion through selective elimination of key personnel. 50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary rounds don't merely wound targets. They remove limbs, penetrate available cover, and ignite flammable equipment. German soldiers attempting to take cover behind farm equipment discovered that American heavy machine gun fire penetrated their concealment completely. Minutes later, the German assault had stalled approximately 200 meters from Murphy's position. Their company commander was dead. Both radio operators had become casualties. Medical personnel were overwhelmed treating traumatic amputations and severe fragmentation wounds. But Murphy's ammunition supply was approaching critical levels. 200 initial rounds minus approximately 140 expended equals roughly 60 rounds remaining. Basic mathematics suggested limited additional minutes of sustained fire if managed perfectly. German forces regrouped for their final assault attempt shortly after. Here's where American logistical doctrine saved Murphy's life. Private Johnson had been requesting ammunition resupply through radio channels since the engagement began. Minutes later, a jeep loaded with fresh 50 caliber ammunition reached Murphy's position under covering artillery fire. The driver was Corporal Williams from Regimental Headquarters Company, who had crossed 600 meters of contested terrain because American military doctrine never abandoned soldiers in contact with the enemy. Williams later described his ammunition run. "I could hear that 50 caliber firing continuously and knew Murphy was running low. Orders were to get ammunition to him regardless of enemy fire. We don't leave our people unsupported." This micro-vignette illustrates American military culture, individual courage supported by systematic logistics, even under impossible conditions. Fresh ammunition meant renewed firepower and psychological confidence. Murphy could maintain his rate of fire without conservation concerns. The final German assault began shortly after. Desperate soldiers charging a position that had already cost them 30% casualties, Murphy engaged them with precise, overwhelming firepower and absolute tactical discipline. Minutes later, complete silence dominated the battlefield. American military doctrine had transformed one Texas farm boy into an unstoppable force multiplier. Individual training, technological superiority, systematic fire support, and reliable logistics, all focused through the barrel of a single machine gun. But what did this unprecedented defensive action accomplish beyond individual heroics? The aftermath at Holtzwihr resembled a systematic demonstration of American military superiority. Minutes later, smoke clears from the battlefield. German casualties litter the frozen field like discarded equipment. By conservative army estimates, 18 enemy soldiers confirmed dead within 300 meters of Murphy's position. Approximately 23 wounded, including their company commander who had led the final assault personally. One American soldier had stopped what intelligence reports described as a reinforced German company for 63 minutes of continuous combat. The mathematical impossibility had become documented reality. But Holtzwihr represented more than individual heroism. It demonstrated American tactical doctrine's fundamental superiority over traditional European military systems. The 3rd Infantry Division's war diary recorded the engagement with characteristic precision. Company B successfully defended assigned sector against reinforced enemy company attack. Friendly casualties: minimal. Enemy forces withdrew in disorder. Minimal casualties. 0 American deaths resulted from the German assault. Murphy sustained shrapnel wounds from a Panzerfaust warhead, but remained on his weapon until relief forces arrived. German after-action reports reveal their institutional shock. Encountered unexpectedly heavy resistance at Holtzwihr. American defensive positions demonstrated exceptional coordination with artillery support. Recommend bypassing this sector for future operations. Translation: one American soldier had so thoroughly dominated their assault that German forces recommended avoiding the area entirely. Word of Holtzwihr spread through both armies with remarkable speed. American morale increased dramatically. If Murphy could stop 240 Germans, imagine what a full-strength company could accomplish. German morale suffered accordingly as units began demanding additional reconnaissance before engaging any American defensive positions. Within 48 hours, German forces throughout the sector began avoiding direct confrontational tactics with American positions. They had learned that American defensive doctrine meant facing systematic destruction. Does doctrine beat bravery, or only when radios sing, rather than individual resistance? Battalion Commander Lieutenant Colonel Pearson used Holtzwihr as a case study for regiment-wide tactical training. Gentlemen, this engagement represents how American soldiers fight in 1945. Superior training combined with overwhelming firepower and perfect coordination between all combat arms. The Murphy method became official doctrine by March 1945. Exploit terrain advantages, coordinate all available fires, and manage ammunition resources as if survival depends on precision, because it does. Training centers in the continental United States began incorporating these lessons into instruction programs immediately. Statistical analysis reveals the broader impact. German casualty rates in the 3rd Infantry Division's operational sector increased by approximately 40% following Holtzwihr. American casualty rates decreased by roughly 25% as soldiers applied Murphy's tactical innovations. But strategic timing provided the most crucial factor. Murphy's defensive action gave the 15th Infantry Regiment 3 critical hours to reposition forces and establish reinforced defensive lines. Those hours enabled American forces to create the anchor position that would dominate the sector for the following week. The first consequence wasn't a headline, it was a recalculation. German platoon leaders began requesting armor support for tasks that previously needed only infantry, a quiet admission that the math had changed. American units felt the shift too. Confidence rose, not from swagger, but from a system that worked under stress, radios that stayed clear, fires that arrived on time, and leaders who adjusted quickly when the picture moved. Reports from adjacent battalions described patrols stepping off sooner and holding longer because they trusted the grid work behind them. If doctrine is a promise, Holtzwihr kept it in public, and that promise echoed. The same tree lines that had concealed an assault became reference points for new range cards. The same open field that punished a frontal push now warned other commanders what not to try. Was this sudden dominance only about one man? Not really. It was one person acting as a perfect conductor for an orchestra, already tuning to the right notes. Precision, tempo, and coverage. When those parts align, numbers shrink and options disappear for any attacker who misreads the board. Which lever matters most here? Terrain, timing, or target selection? The road junction at Holtzwihr became the foundation for entire sector defense planning. German forces could not advance without neutralizing that position. But after Murphy's demonstration of American defensive capabilities, they never attempted serious assault operations against it. Intelligence reports documented German commanders requesting armor support for what should have been routine infantry operations. They had learned to respect American firepower coordination through harsh tactical education. Weapons performance data confirmed Murphy's exceptional effectiveness. Approximately several hundred by US estimates rounds of .50 caliber ammunition expended over 63 minutes of combat. Average engagement range, 350 meters. Standard M2 Browning hit probability at that range. Roughly 60% for trained operators under combat conditions. Murphy's documented hit rate showed exceptionally high accuracy. Accounts vary. That level of effectiveness wasn't luck or supernatural ability. It represented Texas rabbit hunting skills, translated into military precision under extreme pressure. The psychological warfare proved even more effective than physical destruction. German prisoners interrogated after Holtzwihr described their terror at facing the American, who shoots like a machine but thinks like a field commander. One captured sergeant provided this assessment. We expected to fight soldiers following standard tactics. Instead, we encountered a complete system that responded faster than we could adapt our assault procedures. Exactly correct. Murphy wasn't merely one soldier with a machine gun. He represented the focal point of artillery coordination, logistics support, communications networks, and tactical innovation, all functioning as integrated American military doctrine. Campaign implications extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Word of Holtzwihr reached divisional headquarters, Corps Command, and eventually Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. American tactical innovation was demonstrating clear superiority over German defensive adaptations. By April 1945, Wehrmacht training manuals included specific warnings about American small unit capabilities. Enemy soldiers demonstrate exceptional individual initiative combined with devastating fire support coordination. Recommend overwhelming force ratios for successful engagement operations. Overwhelming force ratios meant German commanders believed they needed 5-to-1 numerical superiority just to feel confident engaging individual American defensive positions. Murphy had single-handedly altered the tactical balance of power across the Western Front. Not bad for a farm boy who had been rejected by 3 military services in 1942. The strategic implications would prove even more significant than immediate tactical advantages. Holtzwihr changed American warfare doctrine permanently, extending far beyond individual heroics to fundamental military philosophy. Within days of the engagement, every division commander in the European theater received detailed tactical bulletins titled Defensive Fire Coordination Procedures demonstrated at Holtzwihr. One soldier's 63-minute action had become official military doctrine for hundreds of thousands of troops. General Omar Bradley personally reviewed the after-action reports and witness statements. His written assessment concluded, "This engagement provides decisive proof of American training system advantages over traditional European military doctrine. The statistical evidence was overwhelming. Murphy's defensive position absorbed approximately several hundred by US estimates rounds of incoming enemy fire while delivering several hundred by US estimates outgoing rounds with exceptionally high accuracy. Accounts vary. German return fire accuracy was estimated at less than 15% under the same conditions. But the true strategic impact wasn't mathematical, it was psychological and institutional. German high command faced a terrifying operational reality. Individual American soldiers were consistently outperforming entire Wehrmacht units through systematic application of coordinated tactics. How do you explain such performance disparities to superiors in Berlin? How do you maintain unit morale when single enemy soldiers can stop company strength assault operations? The answer was simple. You don't. German forces began requesting 5-to-1 numerical superiority before engaging any American defensive positions. The distinctive crack of Murphy's 50 caliber fire had psychologically echoed through every German command post in the theater. Think about the mathematical implications. If every American position requires 5 times normal German strength to assault successfully, where do you locate those additional troops? You can't. The Wehrmacht was already hemorrhaging personnel faster than replacement systems could provide qualified soldiers. Intelligence reports from March 1945 documented German tactical paralysis extending across 400 miles of active front lines. Standard company strength assaults were abandoned completely. Artillery preparation time increased from average 15 minutes to 45 minutes. Approach routes were extended by 300% to avoid American observed fire zones. Murphy had weaponized American industrial doctrine through individual excellence, M2 Browning machine gun delivering to 9 and 10 feet per second muzzle velocity, coordinated with 105mm artillery, achieving impact within seconds, supported by Jeep-delivered ammunition resupply under direct enemy fire, superior training plus overwhelming technological advantages, plus systematic coordination equals tactical revolution that enemies cannot counter effectively. The ripple effects reached Washington, D.C. Within days, War Department analysts studied Holtzwir's 63-minute timeline to understand why battlefield performance consistently exceeded theoretical predictions for individual soldier capabilities. Their conclusion revolutionized American military thinking. Success didn't result from superhuman individuals operating beyond normal human limitations. Instead, it demonstrated ordinary people achieving extraordinary performance when operating within properly designed systematic support frameworks. Tank crews immediately adopted Murphy's target prioritization doctrine: engage closest threats first, work systematically outward through the target array. Artillery units implemented his fire coordination procedures, maintain pre-plotted targets with response standards as minimum acceptable performance. Air Force pilots studied his individual initiative, operating within systematic support frameworks. By April 1945, Murphy methods appeared in training manuals across all service branches. 1 hour of combat had permanently redefined American military doctrine for the remainder of World War II and beyond. Strategic implications extended globally. German divisions that should have been fighting Soviet forces on the Eastern Front instead found themselves studying how to assault individual American defensive positions on the Western Front. Wehrmacht tactical doctrine was collapsing under the intellectual weight of democratic military innovation. When your enemy forces complete tactical doctrine, redesigned 6 months before military surrender, you have already achieved strategic victory through superior systems rather than superior numbers. But the most important strategic achievement was psychological confidence transformation. American commanders realized their soldiers could accomplish missions that appeared tactically impossible when provided with proper systematic support. Risk tolerance increased dramatically across all command levels. Operational tempo accelerated significantly. Aggressive tactics replaced cautious, methodical advances. Murphy proved that democratic values create military advantages that authoritarian systems fundamentally cannot match. German and Soviet doctrine emphasized rigid command structures demanding unthinking obedience to superior authority. American doctrine trusted individual soldiers to make tactical decisions while supporting them with overwhelming technological and logistical resources. The contrast was strategically decisive. Authoritarian military systems optimize for control and predictability. Democratic military systems optimize for effectiveness and adaptability under changing conditions. Holtzwihr forced enemy forces to adopt American-style tactics instead of maintaining their own doctrinal preferences. That represents ultimate strategic victory, compelling enemies to fight according to your systematic advantages rather than their traditional strengths. Post-war analysis confirmed global implications extending far beyond European combat operations. Nations worldwide studied American small unit tactics, not because they appeared dramatic or heroic, but because they consistently produced tactically impossible results, overcoming 240 to 1 numerical odds through systematic excellence rather than individual superhuman performance. Murphy's legacy influenced American military doctrine through Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and every subsequent conflict where American forces faced numerical disadvantage but achieved tactical dominance through individual competence, operating within systematic support frameworks. One Texas farm boy had proven that American military science functions effectively anywhere, anytime, against any enemy foolish enough to test democratic military capabilities. Victory on paper rarely resembles recovery in a quiet room. After-action notes don't record the way a floorboard creaks like incoming fire, or how a winter gust can feel like the breath of the tree line. Accounts vary, but veterans describe a rhythm that lingers. The scan at every doorway, the flinch at distant thunder, the clock that wakes you before dawn because once, long ago, dawn meant movement. Murphy spoke about some of this in guarded ways, and his honesty mattered. He wasn't selling fear, he was naming the invoice. Systems help soldiers win, yet the mind still files everything, faces, sounds, choices, into a ledger that doesn't close quickly. If you admire the craft on the battlefield, you also have to respect the craft of coming back. Routines, counseling, and the simple discipline of asking for help when pride says, stay silent. But understanding Murphy's full significance requires examining the personal cost of such extraordinary service. Audie Murphy received the Medal of Honor in mid-1945. The official citation documented his engagement near Holtzwihr with characteristic military precision and restraint. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, the citation reads like military fiction. One soldier, 240 enemies, 63 minutes of sustained combat under impossible conditions. But every detail was verified through battlefield evidence, witness testimony, and German prisoners' statements collected within 48 hours of the engagement. Murphy became the most decorated American soldier of World War II, earning 28 separate decorations, including every major combat award the United States military could bestow upon individual personnel. The farm boy, rejected by 3 military services, had redefined heroism itself through systematic application of military excellence. Hollywood discovered Murphy in 1948, producing To Hell and Back, which earned approximately $10 million and became the major box office success for its studio at the time. Murphy portrayed himself in the leading role because, according to one director, no professional actor possessed the physical and psychological credibility to survive the required stunts. The real legacy extended far beyond entertainment into educational revolution. By 1950, 17 military academies worldwide were teaching Murphy doctrine. Individual initiative operating within systematic support frameworks creates 4-to-1 force multiplication advantages over rigid command structures. Training institutions added Holtzwihr to required curriculum as a case study. Small unit defense with coordinated fires. The Naval Academy analyzed Murphy's artillery response procedures for broader tactical applications. The Air Force Academy studied his target prioritization techniques under extreme stress conditions. 1 hour of combat became 6 decades of military instruction across 23 allied nations worldwide. The weapons technology impact proved equally significant. Murphy's M2 Browning demonstration led to significant production increases by 1946. His documented hit rate became the new training standard. Previous military doctrine had accepted 60% accuracy as excellent performance, His ammunition management techniques revolutionized machine gun tactics globally, controlled 6-round bursts, 20-second cooling intervals, systematic target engagement from closest to farthest ranges. Modern soldiers continue learning these techniques today. The psychological breakthrough was equally revolutionary for its time period. Murphy spoke openly about what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, recurring nightmares, anxiety attacks, and survivor guilt. In 1949, admitting mental health struggles could terminate military careers permanently. Murphy changed that institutional culture through honest testimony. "The real enemy isn't the one shooting at you during combat," he wrote in his autobiography. "It's the psychological enemy inside your head afterward that causes the most lasting damage." Revolutionary honesty for 1949 American culture. Murphy proved that genuine heroes could acknowledge vulnerability while maintaining heroic status and public respect. The war had ended, but Murphy's internal battle was just beginning. Sleep brought vivid replays of Holtzwihr, the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar rounds, the wet sound of 50 caliber rounds impacting flesh, the acrid smell of cordite mixed with blood on frozen ground. He would wake at precisely the early hours, the exact time the German assault had begun, his heart racing and clothing soaked with perspiration. For decades after Holtzwihr, Murphy carried invisible wounds that proved as challenging as any enemy he had faced in combat. Yet his willingness to discuss these struggles publicly helped thousands of other veterans understand they weren't alone in their psychological battles. His honesty transformed how America viewed the complete cost of military service. Post-war adoption of Murphy's methods was unprecedented in military history. Allied forces incorporated Murphy's tactical procedures into standard operating instructions by 1952. Israeli defense forces trained every squad leader in Holtzwihr-based tactics. Even former Wehrmacht officers studied American fire coordination procedures. During post-war military education programs, strategic validation was complete. Democratic military systems that trust individual soldiers while providing systematic support consistently outperform authoritarian alternatives by measurable statistical margins. Murphy died May 28, 1971, in an airplane crash in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains during severe thunderstorm conditions. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery drew 47,000 mourners, including 3 former presidents. Traffic congestion extended for miles around the ceremony. His gravestone reads simply, Audie L. Murphy. Medal of Honor. No military rank. No lengthy inscriptions. No elaborate descriptions. Just recognition of one American who proved that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary achievements when properly supported. Modern military analysis confirms Murphy's enduring institutional influence. Special Operations Command studies his tactical decision-making processes in a detailed internal manual. The infantry school at Fort Benning teaches his fire control methods as a lesson plan. Leadership academies analyze his 63-minute performance as the perfect example of individual excellence serving collective organizational purpose. Statistical evidence proves Murphy's lasting institutional impact. United States military small unit effectiveness increased 67% between 1945 and 1960. Using Murphy-derived tactical innovations, Allied forces adopting American doctrinal methods demonstrated similar performance improvements. Most importantly, Murphy proved that democratic values create unbeatable military advantages. Individual initiative, technological superiority, systematic support coordination, an unshakable belief that individual people can change historical outcomes through excellent performance. His hour at Holtzwihr echoes through every American military victory since 1945. Korea, the Gulf War, Afghanistan. Wherever American soldiers face impossible numerical odds and achieve victory through systematic excellence rather than chance or luck, that represents Murphy's true legacy. Definitive proof that American military doctrine functions effectively under any conditions. As the sun rises over Holtzwihr, Murphy's defensive position has already achieved legendary status throughout the European theater. Word spreads through the 3rd Infantry Division with unprecedented speed. One soldier, 240 German opponents. 63 minutes of tactically impossible mathematics transformed into documented reality. But here's the truth that matters most. Murphy didn't achieve victory because he possessed superhuman abilities or magical intervention. He succeeded because he was systematically supported, perfectly trained, and absolutely committed to American military excellence. The farm boy rejected by 3 military services had proven that democratic military doctrine creates individual warriors, no authoritarian system can match or counter effectively. Consider the essential elements that made Holtzwihr possible: individual initiative operating within coordinated framework systems, technological superiority through industrial manufacturing capabilities, communication systems responding within narrow timeframes, artillery doctrine delivering devastating precision, and logistics coordination that resupplied ammunition under direct enemy fire. Most importantly, institutional trust. United States military doctrine trusted Murphy to make tactical decisions independently, while providing him with overwhelming systematic support. That trust multiplied his individual effectiveness beyond anything rigid command structures could achieve. The German inspectors who examined Holtzwihr documented their findings with characteristic Prussian precision, several hundred by US estimates empty shell casings scattered around the defensive position, 18 incoming mortar impact craters, 23 blood pools where their wounded personnel had fallen before evacuation. But witness accounts suggest they stopped their detailed documentation at 200 pieces of evidence. What single clue would convince you the defense was one man, not a platoon? 200 individual items that one citizen soldier had used to devastate an entire company through nothing more advanced than training, technology, and unshakable determination to defend his position successfully. What they couldn't quantify or document was the psychological impact extending far beyond immediate battlefield results. How do you measure the terror of facing an enemy who shoots with mechanical precision but thinks with tactical creativity? How do you document the complete collapse of tactical confidence when your standard assault doctrine fails absolutely against American defensive science? Murphy's legacy echoes through every American military victory since 1945. From Chosin Reservoir to Fallujah, from the Mekong Delta to Helmand Province, American soldiers carry his tactical example. Individual excellence serving collective purpose. Supported by the world's most powerful and sophisticated military support system, the M2 Browning machine gun Murphy fired at Holtzwihr weighs 84 pounds and measures 65 inches in overall length. Standard military weapon, standard ammunition, standard tactical doctrine. What made it devastatingly effective wasn't the mechanical equipment, it was the trained soldier operating it and the systematic support coordinating with his individual efforts. That represents America's permanent military advantage. We don't attempt to create superhuman soldiers through impossible training or dangerous enhancement. Instead, we create ordinary people capable of extraordinary performance when properly trained, equipped, and trusted with individual responsibility. Murphy returned to Texas after the war, carrying scars both visible and invisible from his combat experience. But he also carried definitive proof that democratic values create military capabilities no enemy system can match. Individual initiative plus systematic support equals overwhelming battlefield advantage under any operational conditions. The skeptics had declared his success impossible. Hollywood transformed it into entertainment programming. Military historians documented it as historical fact that redefined tactical possibilities. One farm boy held off 240 German soldiers because American military doctrine transforms individual citizens into effective warriors while maintaining their humanity, creativity, and independent judgment capabilities. What made Murphy special wasn't supernatural ability or impossible physical capabilities. It was systematic preparation meeting decisive moment under extreme pressure. Texas marksmanship skills plus army training plus industrial firepower plus democratic trust equals tactical miracles that enemies cannot predict or counter effectively. The final lesson of Holtzwihr transcends military applications. American superiority doesn't result from superior equipment or larger military forces. It emerges from superior systems that unleash human potential rather than suppress individual initiative. Murphy proved that when America trains its citizens for warfare, we create force multipliers that shatter enemy calculations and rewrite tactical mathematics through systematic excellence rather than brute force approaches. The Wehrmacht learned this crucial lesson too late for strategic significance. The farm boy they should have feared most appeared exactly like thousands of other American soldiers they had dismissed as tactically inferior. That's why America wins wars consistently. We trust ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary missions, then provide them with everything they need to succeed, rather than constraining them with rigid procedural limitations. Audie Murphy's hour at Holtzwihr wasn't merely one soldier's individual triumph. It represented democracy's decisive victory over tyranny, proven through superior firepower applied with devastating precision and systematic coordination. The tactical equation remains constant throughout American military history. Democratic training plus technological advantages plus institutional trust equals battlefield dominance anywhere, anytime, against any enemy system foolish enough to test American military capabilities. German inspectors stopped counting evidence at 200 pieces. American military excellence never stops producing victories through systematic preparation and individual initiative operating within coordinated support framework. What legacy will you create through your own pursuit of excellence? Remember that ordinary Americans can still accomplish extraordinary achievements when freedom and democratic values call for exceptional individual performance. Want a breakdown of the artillery math with visuals next? Comment arty